Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our October Small Firms Exchange meeting. I am Jennifer Wright. I'm the chair of the committee. And before we get started, I just wanted to let everybody know, in case you hadn't seen this, but we've kicked off this month with some coffee breaks. So every Wednesday morning from 9 to 9:45, we just have a Zoom call where anybody who shows up, we can talk about whatever topic. So I'll put that in the chat. So if people want to sign up, it's a reoccurring thing. So yeah, hope to see you there. And today we're going to talk with Rick Linley. He's from Winnipeg. He's an architect from Winnipeg, and we met on the Entre Architect. We're both in the mastermind through that format group. I never know what to say. So yeah, if anybody's interested in joining something like that, Entre Architecture, their mastermind group, let me know and we can talk about the experiences, because it's been great. So, and it's given me the opportunity to talk to Rick and meet him. And I'm really excited to share what he shared with us about financials with firms, based on his new book. So with that, I'll give it to Rick to introduce himself and talk more about it. We will have more of a time for questions towards the end of the meeting. So make sure to put that in the chat if you have any. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to pull up my,
Sure.
my screen here.
And if you can mute, everybody can mute themselves during this, that would be great.
All right, can everybody see a full screen there? Okay, good. Well, I'll just launch in then. I'm, as Jen said, I'm an architect from Winnipeg. I'm actually a retired architect, which is sometimes a rare thing. I came from a larger practice. We were, when I joined almost 30 years before I retired, we were about 60 people, and when I retired, we were about 200. So I'm coming from a large firm background, but we were a multidisciplinary firm. So we had all the disciplines in our firm, all the engineering, landscape architecture, interior design. And as I said, I retired in 2013. During that time, I taught professional practice at our local university here for 10 years. And right now I have my own consulting firm called Strong Practice Strategies, and I've been working away at that as not a full-time gig, but kind of on a part-time basis for almost 10 years now. And I've recently written a book called Scoreboard Your Practice, and that's what I'm gonna share some of the highlights from that book here today. So let's see here. Let's get my screen organized a bit better here. Okay, so I'm told there's 20 people signed up, but maybe not everybody's here yet or not going to make it. But my understanding is that you folks are owners and leaders of small firms, and that's what the Small Firm Exchange is all about, that the AIA sponsors. And as you all know, the AIA defines a small firm as less than 10 employees. So it's interesting because that means there's 19,000 AIA firms, and 75% of those are small firms. So you're definitely in the majority in terms of people, not so much in terms of billings or access to market, as you all know. And 25% of all the AIA firms are solo practitioners, which is, you know, close to 5,000 firms, solo firms. And the other 50% of that 75% number is 1 to 10 employees. So that's who you folks are, without having shook your hands or gotten to know you any more than just knowing that you're coming from that context. So I wanted to kind of share how I define a strong practice. So strong practices are, because that's my shtick. That's the name of my practice, and that's kind of my part-time job, I feel, is to give back to the profession and try and pass along some of the lessons learned and some of the research that I've been doing over the last 8 or 9 years in terms of what is a strong practice. So first of all, strong practices are designed. Kind of strange that I would be speaking to a bunch of designers, but about designing their practices, but we're not very good at that. It's just kind of an ad hoc thing. But anyway, strong practices are designed, and they're designed to deliver high value work, to win targeted work, to go after targeted work, not just anything, at low cost of sale. I experienced this, and I know you have too, where you kind of blow your brains out trying to get work sometimes, and you spend all your potential profit just to get the job, and then you're stuck doing it for the next 6 to 12 months or whatever, and really there's no prospect of making very much money. So if you're generating lots of value for these targeted clients and projects, you need to be charging premium fees and generating premium margins for your practice. And you're doing all of this stuff while you're trying to achieve your practice goals. So that's how I define a strong practice. And my practice is not so much about growth, although growth can make sense if it's for the right reason. But my practice is focused on helping firms to be strong. And if they want to grow after that, fine. But there's no sense growing if you're not strong, because you're just taking on more headaches. So one of the big hurdles that we face as a profession is the financial hurdle. And there's a great quote that shows up in my book. If you can't measure something, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't control it. And if you can't control it, you can't improve it. And so, this is a big issue for our profession. When I'm working with my consulting clients, this is one of the first hurdles that we have to jump over. And so understanding is the key, but there's a big but for our profession, and that is that we don't really understand our financials. Our accountants might understand our financials, but we are not very good at that. Some better than others, some better teachers than others, but in general, my experience is that we just don't understand our financials. And part of the reason for that is that we tend to focus on our project metrics. So that's the things like how much time we're spending, how much we're spending on direct labor costs, what are our multipliers, what's our utilization rate, what's our percent complete, what kind of billings are we flowing through our practice. And that stuff is all necessary, but it's not sufficient. That just focusing on project metrics is not going to do it. And it's fine for making project decisions, but it's not helpful, not terribly helpful in making practice decisions, which you as a leader or an owner of your firm, you're making practice decisions when you're figuring out how to make your firm stronger. So we have to look at firm metrics, and that's all this stuff that none of us, our eyes kind of glaze over when we see this kind of stuff, our P&L statement, our balance sheet, our cash flow statements, and how this works. And it's just a bunch of numbers, but they are important in terms of firm metrics. The challenge is that, again, like we're like babes in the woods. We're naive on this stuff. We're inexperienced on this stuff. We're kind of innocent. And when we look at our those three financial statements, this is kind of what we see. It's kind of like all these numbers streaming down the screen that only the one can understand. And the one is our accountant. And the accountants can look at this stuff, and our bookkeepers as well. They can look at this stuff and they can see what's going on, but we can't. And you know what? That's because we're not accountants, and we don't want to be accountants. We don't want to be able to see through all these numbers. We want to find a way to make this extremely, extremely simple. So we have to apply that kind of that KISS methodology to our financials. So what I've done is I've created something that I call the scoreboard, and because it's a great analogy in terms of creating something that's simple, it's graphic, it's familiar, something that's familiar to us would be very helpful. It's visible, and you can understand it at a glance. So, you know, if you're at a baseball game or a football game, you can look at the scoreboard and you can see what's going on. And it's accessible to everybody in the stadium, the coaches, the players, and the fans, and the participants, basically. So, so visibility is an important thing. So here's the model, and you're all familiar with this graphic. You see it every day in your practice if you're looking at drawings, and it, you know, some version of a 2 or a 3 number detail call out describing, you know, what the scale of the detail is, and it gives you quite a bit of information about how to find your way around a set of documents. So this is the model that I've adopted for the scoreboard, and the beauty of this is that really all you need is a piece of paper and a pencil. There's no software here. There's no training on software. It's just a quick understanding of how this scoreboard works, and then you're great. You don't have to be faced with that matrix kind of idea of all these numbers. So I wanted to explain the scoreboard for you. As I said, this is visible, familiar to us, hopefully simple. So there are 7 numbers, and the title of my book is Scoreboard Your Practice, 7 numbers to understand your design firm's financials. So there are 7 numbers, and there's 1 ratio in here too, that you need to understand. So I'm going to walk you through these 7 numbers and the ratio, and I'm going to give you some benchmarking information because that's important, so you know where you are relative to the rest of the industry. So let's launch into those 7 numbers. So the first one is full-time equivalent personnel, FTEs. Hopefully you're all familiar with that. If you're a sole practitioner, you have 1 FTE. Of course, unless you're maybe working 60 or 70 hours a week, and maybe that's 1.5 FTEs because you're actually doing more work than 1 person. The next number is net fee, and I'm going to go through a more detailed definition of each of these things. I just want to give you the overview right now. So there's full-time equivalent, net fee, and then the ratio is net fee per full-time equivalent. I'm going to share some benchmarking information with you on that ratio. Then the top of that diagram is adjusted payroll. That's the 3rd number. 4th number is operating expenses. And the 5th number is operating profit. Pipeline, gonna talk about pipeline a little further along here. And cash on hand. So those are the 7 numbers and the 1 ratio. But what I want you to note here is I want you to note the proportions of that model. So this to me is the diagram of a strong practice. So at a glance, I can, if a client of mine plugs their numbers into this diagram, I can at a glance tell whether it's a strong practice or not. And you, if you're using this model, can tell how you're doing. You can use this model on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis. You can decide however you're going to use it. But as I said, I want you to note that adjusted payroll is the top half of this diagram, 50% of your net fee, because your net fee is that green circle there. That's your entire net fee. And operating expenses are about 25% of that, and operating profit in a strong practice would be about 25% of your net fee. So I'm going to walk you through this. But first we need to kind of do a little understand where this stuff is coming from. So in terms of benchmarking your practice, you need to be doing that. You need to be comparing your firm to the industry, and you need to be comparing your past, your recent past, maybe a year or two back, your current situation, your present situation, and then what you're projecting for the future. And you'll see using this tool, this scoreboard tool, can be used to help you predict your future and not just be a rear view mirror kind of scenario. Where I rely for my information mostly is from Deltek. Now, some of you may be familiar with Deltek. They are, I think they would be regarded as the AutoCAD of project-based accounting practices. And they generally work, they're generally used in larger practices. They do have some kind of scaled down versions of their software for smaller practices. I'm not doing a commercial here for Deltek. It's just that they do an annual industry survey, study they call it, of US and Canadian firms. So, and that survey is free. So that's why I like it. It's pretty comprehensive. It's kind of a 40 or 50 page document. You can go there right after this session and download it for free and see what's going on in the industry. But that's not the only source of benchmarking data. There's PSMJ, many of you may be familiar with, or Zweig White consulting firms to our industry. And of course, the AIA has some great resources, especially some of the studies they've done. Even I just looked through it recently, the small firm exchange kind of study that was done. So that the AIA has great information, and there are others. But the point is, you need to be tracking yourself against the industry to know whether you're kind of doing well or not, whether you're strong or not. Speaking of this ratio, this net fee per FTE, I've taken the Deltek information and kind of synthesized it and simplified it. And for me, the way I interpret it, a struggling firm is doing less than $120,000 of net fee per FTE. So again, I'm going to explain some of these terms in more detail, but I just want you to get the big picture here. Strong firms are generally doing between $120,000 and $170,000 of net fee per FTE. And super firms, I characterize in the book, super firms are more than 170,000 net fee per FTE. Now, if you go back 10 years, those numbers are going to be different. And if you go forward 10 years, those numbers are going to be different. So there's inflation, et cetera, et cetera. But right now, that's about where our industry is in terms of what our industry is generating net fee per FTE. So now I'm going to just kind of go into a little more detail on these key metrics. So let's just take a look first at this notion of full-time equivalent. So full-time equivalent staff is all your full-time personnel. And the reason you have to show everybody, including principals, is that if you're going to compare yourself to the industry, that's how the industry defines staff, full-time equivalents. So although the AIA talks about employees, when you're calculating or adding up your full-time equivalents, you have to include yourself as the principal or your partners. And if you have part-time staff, then those are fractional staff. So you generally average that over a full year. So if you have eight people at 100% and 2 at 50 and 1 at 25%, that's 9.2 FTEs that you would have in your practice. So and that's, you're not going to find that on your balance sheet or your income statement or your cash flow statement. That's something you have to do. You have to go around the room and count and kind of check that against how many hours everybody has done in a year, and then you'll have a good sense of what your FTE count is. And that's a pivotal number, especially that along with net fee. So let's talk about net fee, which is your gross fee. That's all the money that comes into your practice, less the reimbursables and subconsultants that you have. So you start with that gross fee revenue number, and that's easy to find on your P&L statement. But you don't get to play with that money, or you don't get to do business with that money. It doesn't belong, not all of it belongs to you. Some of it flows out as reimbursables. Those are expenses that are passed on to others. And some of it flows out as subconsultant fees. And so these two, reimbursables and subconsultant fees, are kind of referred to as pass-throughs. They kind of pass through your practice. Sometimes you get a markup on them, and sometimes you don't. Depends how you've negotiated your contract. So that leaves you with the net fee, and that's that that green circle, or I call it a pie. It's like that's the pie that you have to work with. Okay, so let's talk about we've got this pie starting to form here, and the top half of it is payroll, adjusted payroll actually, and that's all staff and principal salaries normalized or adjusted. And so staff salaries are the base cost to execute the work. It doesn't include, it includes overtime payments, vacation, sick days, stat holidays. That's all part of the salary that you pay to staff, whether you're paying hourly or salary. You're generally paying those amounts. And then you have to add principal salaries to the staff salaries, and you have to normalize that to the market. Again, if you want to compare yourself to the industry, you need to normalize principal salaries. And what I find in small firms that I work with is that they often underpay themselves. Some overpay themselves relative to the industry, but most underpay themselves relative to the industry. And so you have to do an adjustment, because if you pay yourself $1 a year, then what you're really doing is you're reducing your payroll costs and increasing your operating profit, which is deceptive. You could be diluting yourself. So it's important that you adjust your over and under payments for your principal salaries. And then you want to make sure that you're not including benefit costs like employment insurance, and this is a Canada pension plan. That would be your 401k contributions, those kind of things, workers' comp, pension, group health, those kind of things are benefit costs, and that's part of your operating expenses as a firm. So let's talk about that, operating expenses. That's all your expenses, and again, you have to normalize those, but you're excluding the things above. You're excluding your reimbursables and subconsultants, and you're excluding your payroll. So quickly, you've got kind of 4 categories here. You got labor-related costs. I'm not going to go through them in detail. You can kind of look through that. But you've got marketing costs, non-payroll costs. You've got facility costs if you're renting or you own a building and you've got to pay a mortgage. And then you've got corporate costs like liability insurance, general insurance. You got professionals that you're engaging with. If you've got debts to be serviced, or if you've got bad debts, those are corporate costs. So, and it's interesting because operating expenses, when you do look at your P&L statement, and I'm saying they're necessary but not sufficient. That's all I'm saying. But when you do look at your profit and loss statement, this category of operating expenses takes up the vast majority of that analysis, and yet it's really just the one number. When you're looking at trimming costs, you're going to go and dive deep into that. But in terms of this model, you're just looking at one number, which is your operating expenses. So then that moves us to the bottom right-hand side of that diagram, which is operating profit. And really, that is your net fee. That's the green circle, minus your payroll costs. That's the top half, minus your expenses. It's the bottom left 25%. And that will leave you with your operating profit. Now, operating profit is different than net profit. So operating profit is used for a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't end up in your pocket, not all of it anyways. It's used to pay back debt, principal on debt. It's used to bridge uncollected accounts receivable. I'm sure nobody here has excessive accounts receivable, but this money is used to bridge that when it does happen. Have a cash reserve for a kind of a cookie jar for rainy days, something like maybe a pandemic were to happen or something like that. You use the operating profit for growth. If you're hiring or if you're going to do some extra marketing, or if an opportunity comes up, you're going to use some of that operating profit for growth and for investing in the future of the practice. You're going to use that operating profit for capital purchases like hardware and furniture and equipment and special tools and whatever it is in your practice that you need to buy once you've already gotten your profit. And then bonuses to staff. If you bonus your staff, might be a discretionary bonuses or profit sharing or performance bonuses, or there's all kinds of different bonuses. Then you got to pay your taxes, corporate taxes, and then then after that you get to take home kind of what's left after all that stuff has been taken care of. So that's your shareholder distributions. So that's operating profit. It's important to remember that operating profit is not what you take home necessarily. It might be if you had no other expenses, no other operating expenses. No other expenses coming out of operating profits. So let's talk a little bit about pipeline. And on that diagram, pipeline was the dotted line that went around the net fee pie. So this is all projects that are currently under contract, plus your potential projects. So that's the definition of a pipeline. It's backlog is what's contracted and underway. So if you have if you've got $100,000 of fee and you've earned half of it, there's still $50,000 to earn, and so that's backlog, and that's going to sustain you going forward. The other thing that's going to sustain you is your pursuit of projects, and those are generally prospects are high probability of you getting a contract for your services. You don't have it yet. It might be you might have a 25% chance of getting that work, or you might have a 99% chance of getting that work, but you don't have a signed contract. Backlog is a signed contract and the work is underway. And then there's a third type. I call it blue sky. It's on your radar in terms of, again, your target clients that you're going after, target projects, but it's in the distant future. It might be a year or two out, but you're just keeping an eye on it. You really can't quantify it at this point. You're just keeping an eye on it. And so when you add those together, you get your pipeline number, which in a strong firm is actually larger than your annual net fee. And that's why that dotted line is outside the circle. And then cash on hand is a simple idea. You just want some money in your piggy bank for when for taking advantage of opportunities, or that's that chunk of your operating profit that you're setting aside. So that, as I said, that's used for any lag between projects. You're waiting for a project to start and you've decided not to lay people off, or slow payment by clients. That's the AR issue. If you have, heaven forbid, pending claims coming up, you'll often have a set aside for that. If you're going to have a claim on your liability insurance, you'll have a set aside for that. Extraordinary bonuses that pop up, maybe just a spot bonus for somebody who's done an extraordinary, made an extraordinary contribution to the firm. And then for growth opportunities. So you want to have some cash on hand, and you should usually target, I advocate for having about 10% of your net fee as cash on hand, and that represents about two plus or minus 2 months of your payroll and operating expenses. So you've got kind of a 2-month cushion to make decisions. And it's actually good not to have too much cash on hand. If you have too much cash on hand, then number one, if you do get sued, that's available to whoever is suing you. The other thing about it is that it encourages you to slow your decision-making, your practice decision-making. If you've got a longer runway to make a decision, then you'll just take more time. So it's important to have the right amount. The right amount is different for every firm. Okay, so those are the 7 metrics. Okay, so now let's plug them into some examples of firms. So let's take a struggling practice and plug those numbers in. So the first thing you can see with this diagram is, oh my goodness, this firm is struggling. Without knowing much more than this, you know that something is not right here, and it's not where you really want to be. So let's just plug some numbers in. Let's say you have a practice of 4 FTEs, okay, 4 full-time equivalents. That's the principal and 3 other personnel in the firm, okay? And let's say you're doing $100,000 of net fee per FTE. That I defined that anything below 120,000 is kind of is a struggling firm to me. And so that means that you would, if those are your numbers, you're going to be generating $400,000 annually in net fee. That's the big green circle there, okay? So let's split that up now. Let's say you're spending about 63%, not 50%, but you're overspending on, in terms of a strong firm, you're overspending on your adjusted payroll. So the average there is about, you're paying people on average, including the principal, say $62,500 a year per FTE. The principal gets paid more, you know, the lesser trained staff are getting paid less. That's the way it works. Your operating expenses, let's say they're 31% or greater than, also greater than that 25% target of a strong practice. And then your operating profit is around 6%. And so after you've paid your taxes and after you've, you know, bought a new computer or whatever, let's say you've got 15 grand left to take home. So, you know, you're, as a small practitioner, this may be, or as a struggling practitioner with 4 FTEs, this may be a picture that you might want to avoid. I work with my clients to get them out of this kind of scenario. And so the pipeline here, as you can see, is less than, that dotted line is less than your annual net fee. It's, call it 25% of net fee, which would be about $100,000 of pipeline. And remember, pipeline is backlog plus prospects. And then your cash on hand, probably 0, or might even be a negative number in a struggling firm. If you're not generating profits sufficient to pay your bills, et cetera, then you might be going into debt here if this is a sustained situation. Okay, so that's the struggling practice. Let's look at a strong practice example. Again, 4 FTEs. My guess is that it's not the same 4 FTEs, or it's a completely different firm, obviously. So let's call it, for round numbers, let's make it 150,000 net fee per FTE. That makes it a $600,000 firm. You can see the top half, 50%, is or half of the 600,000 is $300,000 being spent on payroll, adjusted payroll, and that's an average now of 75,000 per FTE, which is, you know, quite a bit more than the 62. You can see that this firm is going to be in a much better position to attract and retain staff than the struggling firm. The struggling firm is really, you know, in terms of the marketplace, is going to be really having a hard time with attraction and retention. Operating expenses about $150,000 or 25%, and operating profit about the same, 25%. You can see the take home here for let's assume a 1 principal in a firm of 4 FTEs, taking home probably, you know, close to 100, maybe a little bit more than $100,000 versus the $15,000 that we saw previously. Pipeline, you like to have your pipeline, you always like to see this for a pipeline greater than your net fee. And what that does is it allows you to say no to projects. So you can go chase targeted work, and even the targeted work, not all, you may have more than you can handle, which is a good thing, because then you get to say no. Most of us as practitioners kind of dream of being able to, in a nice way, turn down work because our pipelines are full, we're making the kind of money we want to make, we're working as hard as we want to work, et cetera. So, and then having about 10% of cash on hand, or about 60 grand, which is about, you know, 2 months of payroll and expenses. So that's a strong practice. Now let's look at a super practice, and you can see the diagram is dramatically different, right? They're spending same 4 FTEs, 200,000 per FTE. That's a $800,000 firm. Adjusted payroll is spending 45% of net fee, which is less than the half, but still the average salary per FTE is now pushing up into the $90,000 range. Much easier to attract and retain, get higher level personnel who are more efficient. And especially if you're focused on your project work, then that efficiency comes through in the fact that you're spending less on payroll than the other firms are. Operating expenses, again, that's an efficiency scenario where you just don't need to spend as much on professional development and all those sorts of things that make up your operating expenses, because you're already an expert, you're already executing this work very effectively. And then operating profit. Now we're if you're getting 33% operating profit, then now you're taking home as a sole principal maybe $185,000 of salary. Again, this is a 4-person firm, okay? And these are not strange numbers. Super practices are obviously a smaller percentage of practices, but they exist. And this kind of financial picture is not unusual in a firm like this. So pipeline is maybe 135% because they've got people lined up waiting for them to do their work. And then cash on hand, again, 10%. Don't put too much cash away. Like, make sure that you're being disciplined about your practice decisions. So how do you go from struggling to strong? Easier said than done, but this scoreboard offers, I like to think of it as kind of a Swiss Army knife. It's kind of like 8 tools in one. First of all, it provides you with a diagnostic, so you can diagnose your practice, where you're at relative to the industry. You can do some planning and budgeting. So you can say, well, this is where I am, this is where I want to go. You can assess everything. You can dive deep into that operating expense part of the pie there, and go look at it in detail. You can make decisions even if you're not an owner or a leader in a firm, but you're thinking of buying or buying that part of this practice, or even building your own practice. This is a great tool to help you plan that and create part of your business plan, your financial aspect of your business plan. You can use this scoreboard model. If you're a leader in a firm and you're getting ready for succession, you're 5 to 10 years out from a transition or from a retirement or whatever, you can use this tool to start thinking where you need to be so that you can exit the practice. It's a great communication tool. I was talking to a practitioner the other day who said, my wife would really like to know what's going on in my practice. And I said, yeah, and it's great for your talking to your banker too. And he said, yeah, my wife is my banker. So, communication, it's a great tool. It's simple enough that it's a tool to help communicate what's going on in your practice. You can use it to communicate with your staff too, depending on how open you are with your financials. It's also a crystal ball. That dotted line is your crystal ball. That's your pipeline. That's where your work is coming from. And it's just a good checklist to say, is my payroll tracking correctly? Are my operating expenses, my operating profit, my cash on hand? So here, just take you through this 4-person example. I'm on the last couple of slides here. So let's say you've got a 4-person firm that's struggling. That's that one I described earlier. And you set a target. Okay, I want to become a strong practice. So that's the target here. And so in year 1, you start to move the dials on this scoreboard. And it depends on what size your firm is, whether you have partners, how hard it is to get everybody on board with your vision for the future. This whole exercise might take months, or it might take years. But in any event, the idea is to move from wherever you are to wherever you want to go. And the thing to note here is that this is not a bigger firm. This is still a 4-person firm. You've just figured out a way to generate higher premium margins on your work, to go after targeted clients, all those things I talked about in terms of how to define a strong practice. So to strengthen your firm, the reason I wrote the book is because you need a scoreboard. And so if you're interested in, I've got that template there. I've got a PDF of that template that you can fill in for yourself for your own practice. If you'd like that, I'd be happy to email it to you if you send me your email. And if you're looking for any other resources or interested in finding out a little bit more about me and my practice, that's my website. And with that, I'll thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions. I don't see any in the chat, but.
Well, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
First of all, I'd just like to get a reaction from your group there, Jen, in terms of how applicable, like, first of all, I know I can't ask for a show of hands, but how many folks are actually sole practitioners? Jen, maybe you could tell me from your group, there are, on a percentage basis, how many folks would be 1 FTE firms?
Yeah, I don't even know. I do not have that data. We could go back to the, like we could leave this and just go back to the big room and have people, maybe
okay,
people would
I'll
be.
stop my share here. So the reason I asked that question is because this model, I think, is more applicable to more than one person. In a 1-person firm, I think most practitioners, when they're solo practitioners, they just lump all their expenses together, and then they have draws from their profit as they go through a year. And they don't think of their firm in these terms necessarily. So I was kind of curious to know how many people are solo practitioners versus having 1 to 10 staff, which is the definition of a small practice.
Yeah, it feels like, just from cursory looking, and I don't know everybody, but in this group, there's more people that have just 1, solo practitioner versus, as you said, like 5 to 10. Mm-hmm. There was a question about accounting for vacations, holidays, and leave time in the adjusted salary.
Yeah, so that, if you're paying a person a salary, their vacation is generally included in that salary, their holiday, their statutory holiday kind of time, it's included in that salary. If you pay somebody $75,000 a year, that includes X number of weeks of vacation and X number of 6 days. And so that's all included in that salary number.
Got it. Yeah, it does feel like, as a sole practitioner, when I look at those numbers, and it's supposed to be, what did you say for strong, 120 to 170?
Well, yeah, 120 to 170, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if it's not there, what are the things?
Well, I guess I was looking through the AIA compensation survey for small practices, and the one thing that struck me was that solo practitioners, so that'd be a 1-person firm, they actually, on the median numbers there, they get paid less than staff architects. And yet the pressures on a solo practitioner are far beyond what a staff architect would have to endure. And I would expect that for the risk that a solo practitioner is taking, that they would want to be getting paid at least a little bit more than a staff architect, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And so the other question I have is, for solo practitioners, are those kind of my practice is kind of, I almost call it like a moonlight practice, like it's not my primary source of income. I do it on a part-time basis. And I'm curious to know for solo practitioners, how much how many solo practitioners are actually, that's their job, that's their full-time job, and then they can start to compare their salaries to firms of 1 to 10 or staff architects.
Does anybody want to jump in with that?
Kathy, are you with the AIA?
Yes.
Yeah, so would the AIA track that kind of information on solo, like go deeper into the solo practice world?
I think there is some information available. I'm with AIA Oregon rather than national.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have that like right at the tip of my fingers, but I think there are ways to go into that deeper data crunching, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that, Rick, were you saying, is that what people are stating that they're paying themselves?
Well, I don't know how the small firm exchange does that compensation survey, but when I looked at it, it said the median salary of a solo practitioner was less than the median salary of a staff architect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, go ahead, Rex.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
I had a quick question for you, Rick. Really appreciate your time and presentation. Delivery was excellent in your book, which I hope would follow similarly your presentation today. Apologize if I missed it. Is that available on Amazon, or
Yeah,
how can
it
one
is.
purchase your book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Oh,
The link
Okay.
is in the event page for this event.
on the event page?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And sorry I have to travel, but
No problem.
appreciate your time.
I see one question there
Yeah, go ahead.
about why the preference for accrual basis versus cash basis. And again, this may be a solo practitioner thing versus a multi-person firm. But accrual is, if you're going to run a small practice, the almost the universal recommendation is do it on an accrual basis. You may do your taxes on a cash basis, but run your firm on an accrual basis. That's how you're going to understand, things like pipelines and what you're expected to be earning over the next quarter or that sort of thing. So accrual is a much better way to run your practice. I understand solo practitioners might just wait for the money to come in and then they distribute it or use it. But if you're on accrual, you have to pay attention. You have to pay more attention, but it also creates more discipline to be paying attention to that stuff.
So are most of the firms that you've helped or are consulting with, are they, what size?
They would range from 3 to 20 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a mix of small and mid-sized firms.
Yeah.
But once you get past that number, firms in the larger firms have the resources. They don't need to hire as many consultants. They can, their own leadership can deal with this stuff. I'm working with a firm actually in Victoria, just on Vancouver Island right now, and they're 15 people, and they're 10 years out from retirement, but they're starting to look at a succession strategy, and they figure they need to grow to be 25 so that they can keep making the same amount of money they're making now, and while bringing on new staff, new leadership. So those are the kind of issues that I'm dealing with in my practice as I'm helping these firms.
So it's more about financial strength and growth, it sounds like, in that scenario.
Now again, my focus is strength before growth. My philosophy is, why would you, if you're a struggling firm and you think you're going to solve your problems by growing, you're not. You need to get stronger, at least at the same time you're growing, which is hard to do. preferably before you start growing. And then, why take on all the extra liability that you take on as a practitioner through projects and stuff, knowing that you're struggling, so you're not running your practice optimally. Why would you want to grow it and take that stuff on until you figure out exactly what you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I know we've had discussions about, what you term as targeted, right? Like you're getting into a niche, targeting clients,
Right?
And that kind of overlaps. I'm curious about the resources. Somebody's consulting with you. That's not what you're consulting on. How to become a targeted
I do.
person.
I did. I just a couple of weeks ago, I did a session. It's called a masterclass session for Entree Architect. It's for members only, but I talked about how to position your practice, how to align your operating system of your practice with your positioning in the marketplace, and then how to measure using this scoreboard, how to measure how you're doing in terms of your progression towards getting stronger. So that's my consulting is about positioning, alignment of your operating system, and the measurement aspect as well. They all go hand in hand.
Yeah. Especially if you're trying to use previous projections, past, right, and future. That's one of those ones that are a little bit challenging as you're trying to get more into your targeted niche, right?
Right.
So you're saying, no, I would think more often perhaps, but getting larger opportunities.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Quiet crowd.
I know.
Well, one thing about this model is there's a kind of an interesting quote from a guy named kind of a quality guru, statistician guru. His name is George Box. I don't know much about him, but he has a great line. He says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And so I like to think of this scoreboard as a model. It's not perfect, but I think it's useful for practitioners to keep things simple and to kind of figure out what's going on in that side of their practice that often we just leave to our accountants and our bookkeepers, and it's a mystery for us. And as leaders and owners, we need to find a way to understand that stuff. And we don't want to be accountants, so got to find another way.
Pivoting hard. So now there's two questions. One is about, does this change for nonprofits, like the ratios, the percentages, the outlook?
I don't think so, except your profit number is, you have to take care of all that other stuff that in your operating profit, you remember that slide where I had all that other stuff like taxes and whatever, right? You have to take care of all of that. And if your idea is not to have any profit after that, then, well, that's fine. So maybe you can spend more on your payroll, and you can spend more in your expenses. So you may be employing people in an inefficient way. And that's entirely up to you. I mean, you may just do way more research than you would do in a typical firm, right? So you're spending money on research when a typical firm would not be investing that heavily in those kind of areas.
Right. Joe, did you?
Yeah, I had a question, probably speaking mainly to the whole group. Maybe that's why there aren't a whole lot of questions, but does your book perhaps address the ideal way to start a firm for those of us who've never run their own firm or worked in a small enough firm and be part of this kind of leadership you're talking about?
No, the book doesn't address startup issues, other than to say, as I mentioned today, that this tool is a good way to start thinking about what your firm should look like before you start it. So when you're in the planning phase of starting a firm, you can use a tool like this. You could say, well, do I want to be 5 people, or do I want to be a solo practitioner? one of the what I did as a result of the book is I wrote a little, I call it an ebook. It's not even have any thickness. It's like a 10-page ebook called Goldilocks Your Firm, and that's a very quick article almost on the things that you should be asking yourself if you're getting ready to grow your practice. So if you're going from 0 to 1, there's relevant questions in here that you might want to have asked. So if you it's kind of an add-on. It's a companion piece to the book. So if you buy the book, you get this free if you just ask me, and I'll send it to you. So it's there. There's some of that information is there, but there are other authors out there who offer much better, more focused information on how to start a practice, and the AIA has lots of those resources too.
Yeah, thank you. No, it'd be interesting to like do that exercise now and then come back a year later, see where everybody is.
Well, my recommendation is that people do this at least once a year. They take their year-end statements, plug them into this model. You might have to get your bookkeeper to help you interpret from your statements to the model, but plug the numbers in and see where you're at. See what your diagram looks like.
Do you see this question in there, Rick?
Profitability seems to favor firms that take on more standard, more prescriptive, less cutting-edge projects, whereas small firms that strive to push boundaries, do new and different details, win awards, get published, etc., seem to pay a price when it comes to profitability. Is this a misconception on my part? Are there small firms that can be both profitable and design forward? That last sentence is yes, there are small firms that can be both profitable and focused as what I call an idea firm. One of the things I talk about when I'm talking about positioning is you can position yourself as an idea practice, and you can be very profitable at that, whether you're big or small. You can position yourself as a service-based practice, which are typically larger practices focused on, we have the experience to do this work. And then, or you could position yourself, and this is fundamentally, as a delivery firm, which is focused on delivering efficiently often for developers and folks who want things done quickly, efficiently. And there are firms that build their operating model around that. And then, as I said, they have to align their operating system to support that positioning. And then there are a lot of firms that I call generalist or jack of all trades practices that try to do all that stuff. And those are the ones that are often really struggling because they just haven't focused. They haven't decided what they want to be. So it is possible. Just because you want to be an idea firm or a design firm doesn't mean you have to suffer from a profitability standpoint.
Is this positioning that you're describing, is that part of the book too? That's in, you
no,
cover that kind of in the book.
Nope.
Okay.
That's my next book.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. More to come. Well, it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap it up. But thank you so much, Rick, for sharing all this with us. And again, if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can. And I think that was great information, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me here today, and I hope it's been, as I say, I hope the model isn't perfect, but I hope it's been useful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you want to remind people about the small firms, not happy hour, a coffee break thing again, since more people were here this time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, join us next Wednesday for the next coffee break. So 9 to 9:45. And I think the link is in the chat.
Yeah, but they didn't come in when I had that, then they're not.
Oh, yeah.
So let me put it in one more time.
Yeah, anybody's invited, and it's just whomever shows up. It's very organic.
Two have been very, very.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been good discussion. So welcome to have everybody. All right. Well, thanks again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.